This was maybe a year ago, give or take, so the timeline is a little fuzzy. I'd just finished a long shift at work, and one of my coworkers, a girl I got along with really well, suggested we go see a movie together to unwind. That sounded perfect to me, so we made plans right after clocking out. Before heading to the theater, she asked if we could swing by her place so she could get out of her work uniform. Her house was close, 5 minutes from the store, so I didn't mind at all. We ended up hanging there for a short while, grabbed something quick to eat, and then got back in my car to go. On the way out, she mentioned wanting to stop at the gas station near her house for a drink. It wasn't out of the way, so I pulled in. The lot was pretty full, and the only open spot was over by an old car wash building next to the station. To give you a picture, the car wash sat right beside the gas station, both entrances facing the same road, but the wash looked abandoned. No lights, no movement, just an empty shell of a building. The gas station itself wasn't much better. It was one of those places that never got updated, the kind with cracked pavement and dim lighting, so the only real light in that area was coming from my headlights. There was also a semi-truck parked along the side of the station with cones around it, like the driver was taking a break or doing some maintenance. She went inside to grab her drink, and I stayed in the car scrolling through my phone. It was a habit of mine to lock the doors as soon as someone got out, and thank God I did. A couple of minutes later, something caught my eye in the side mirror, a bright beam of light shining straight at my window. I turned my head and saw the truck driver holding a flashlight aimed directly at me. He didn't say a word, just stood there shining it at my window for what felt like forever, but was probably 20 seconds or so. I tried to make sense of it. Maybe he needed me to move. But before I could even react, he started walking toward my car, flashlight still on. I cracked my window, maybe an inch, because if he did need to tell me something, I didn't want to ignore him completely. But when he got within a few feet, he just stopped dead in his tracks. Didn't say anything, didn't gesture, just turned and walked back toward his truck. That's when my nerves really kicked in. Something about the way he moved didn't seem like a guy who changed his mind about asking for directions. I rolled the window up fast and kept my eyes on him. He started digging around inside the front of his truck, and then I saw him pull something out. I couldn't tell what it was, and honestly, I don't want to know. He started back toward my car, this time talking loudly, but I couldn't make out a single word. By now my heart was pounding, and then he grabbed my door handle. Not just once. He pulled at it multiple times, each one harder than the last, like he thought he could force it open. That's when my coworker came out of the gas station. The look on her face said everything. She looked terrified. The guy noticed her walking up and froze for a second, then bolted back to his truck without saying a word. I didn't even wait for her to close the door before I started driving. To this day, I have no clue what he wanted or what he had planned. My friend thinks he probably saw I was alone and decided I'd be an easy target, maybe for something really bad. That's the only explanation that makes any sense, but I'm just glad I didn't stick around to find out. Back when I used to drive trucks cross-country, I had some weird experiences on the road. I only did that job for about a year, but there's one night that stands out and still gives me chills. The thing is, I'd seen plenty of strange characters before. People acting out of it. Folks doing odd things like showering in windshield washer fluid at a truck stop. But this one guy was different. He's part of the reason I eventually decided trucking wasn't for me. It happened on a long haul to California. We were running through Arkansas, and I pulled into a rest area around 3:30 in the morning. It was pouring rain, that steady, cold kind that soaks through your clothes, and the rest area sat a little ways down from the highway. Trees were everywhere, making the place feel closed off. The parking lot was quiet, just a couple of cars and a few semis parked for the night. I shut off the engine, logged out for my break, and decided to hit the restroom before settling in. When I stepped out, I noticed a guy sitting alone on one of the benches near the bathrooms. He had a cigarette, just sitting there in the dark like he'd been there a while. I didn't think too much of it and walked past him into the restroom. When I came out, he was still in the same spot, but this time he turned his whole body to watch me as I walked by. I couldn't see his face clearly because of the shadows, but I could feel him looking. I didn't say a word. I just walked faster, got back in the truck, and locked the door. I figured that was the end of it. I grabbed some beef jerky and turned on the radio, trying to relax. Then I caught some movement in the corner of my eye and looked out toward the benches. The guy wasn't there anymore. My eyes scanned the lot until I spotted him under the nearest light post, 10 feet from my truck, standing perfectly still. Something about how he just appeared there made every muscle in my body tense up. I killed the radio and stared at him, and he stared right back. This went on for what felt like forever. He didn't move. He didn't even take a drag off his cigarette, which was still glowing in the dark. Finally, I woke my co-driver up because this was getting too weird. I told him someone was creeping around outside, and when he looked out the curtain, the guy was gone. Then I caught him in the mirror. He was walking slowly toward the back of the truck. I told my co-driver, and we both watched as he circled around to the passenger side. I slid over and grabbed my knife just in case. The guy stopped right by the passenger door and started looking in through the little lower window semis have. That's when I lost it and yelled, "What the hell do you want?" He jumped back like I startled him, then tried to peek into the main window. That's when I saw his face. Thin guy, maybe in his 50s, bright blue eyes that looked way too wide, like he hadn't slept in days. My co-driver shouted, asking if he needed something, and the second he realized there were two of us in the truck, his whole posture changed. He straightened up, turned around, and just walked off. We kept our eyes on him after that. Every time a car pulled in, he moved to the closest light post and just stood there, like he was waiting for something. We debated calling the cops, but he wasn't technically doing anything illegal. Then out of nowhere, he checked his phone, got frustrated, and sprinted to a car parked at the far end. A few seconds later, he was gone, peeled out of there like he'd been late for something. I still don't know what he wanted, but I have my guesses. That rest area was completely hidden from the highway and didn't seem to have any security. It was the perfect place for someone with bad intentions. If we hadn't both been there, I'm not sure how that night would have ended. This happened a few months back in March, when my sister and I were heading to the airport for a super early morning flight. Our flight to Orlando was at 6 a.m. because we had plans to spend a few days at Universal Studios. To make that flight, we were on the road somewhere between 3 and 3:30 in the morning. It was one of those quiet drives where the world feels half asleep. The highway wasn't empty, but traffic was light, and most cars were spread out far apart. At some point, we ended up behind a semi-truck. It was cruising along at a decent speed, and my sister decided to just stick behind it instead of passing. She knows how much I hate being right next to semis. I've always been on edge around them. My family has had some close calls before, and I've heard way too many stories about accidents involving big rigs to feel relaxed next to one. So for a while, I was fine with us hanging back behind the truck. For the first 20 minutes, nothing seemed strange at all. The truck kept up with the flow of traffic, didn't speed, didn't slow down. It was just a normal drive. But then, without any warning, the driver started doing some really strange things. He would suddenly tap the brakes for no reason. At first, I thought maybe there was something in the road or he saw an animal, but the road ahead was completely clear. There wasn't any bad weather either. It was cloudy but calm, not windy or rainy. After that, the truck started drifting toward the next lane like the driver wasn't paying attention. Then it would jerk back, straighten up, and do it again a little later. That's when my sister eased off even more to give him plenty of room. Eventually, it got to the point where we were pretty far away from everyone else. It was just us and this big truck on a dark stretch of highway. That's when my nerves really kicked in. Things got worse when the truck suddenly swerved far enough to hit the rumble strips on the shoulder. The loud vibration and sparks of debris flying from the edge of the pavement were enough for me to speak up. I told my sister, "You need to pass him. This is getting too weird." She agreed immediately and decided to just go around him quickly and put some distance between us. She hit her blinker, switched lanes, and started speeding up. But the second we pulled alongside the truck, everything changed. The driver laid on the horn so loud it made me jump, then started flashing his high beams straight into our car. Right after that, he slammed on the gas, and it was obvious he was trying to keep us from getting ahead. My sister didn't back off. She just pressed harder on the gas. That's when things got scary. The truck started drifting into our lane, little by little, until we had no choice but to ride on the rumble strips to avoid being sideswiped. Finally, my sister floored it, and we managed to pull in front of the truck. For a second, I thought it was over, but when she let off the gas, I looked in the mirror and saw that truck barreling toward us. He was flying, trying to catch up. My sister slammed her foot down again. We finally started gaining distance, and just when I thought my heart couldn't pound any harder, we caught up to some other cars that had been ahead of us earlier. Being around more traffic gave us a little buffer, and the truck couldn't pull the same aggressive moves with more cars nearby. He stayed behind the pack, and that was the last time we saw him. The entire drive after that, I kept looking over my shoulder just in case. To this day, I still don't know why that happened or what that driver's deal was, but it definitely made me even more uneasy around semi-trucks than I already was. I've been driving trucks for a long time, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the road at night has its share of strange moments. This particular one happened while I was hauling up US 93 in Nevada, heading toward Portland for a delivery. It was late, about 1:30 in the morning, and I needed to stop for my mandatory 30-minute break. I spotted a wide pull-off area that looked good enough, so I parked, got my logs in order, and threw together a quick sandwich. While I'm sitting there eating, I notice a vehicle roll in behind me. At first I didn't think much of it. Plenty of drivers stop in random spots to take a break. But something about this one made me pay attention. I kept glancing in my mirrors as I chewed, and that's when I saw a figure step out of the car. The headlights lit them up as they walked toward my trailer. The person stopped at the back corner on the driver's side and seemed to be touching the side of my trailer, almost like they were feeling it or rubbing something on it. That didn't sit right with me, so I reached into my lockbox in the sleeper, grabbed my pistol, loaded it, and tucked it into my waistband before climbing down from the cab. I walked toward the back, flashlight in one hand, the other resting on the grip of my gun. When I shined the light, I saw this guy, a strange-looking man with greasy, shoulder-length hair and a bald spot on top. He was wearing a dirty, off-white trench coat, and sure enough, his hand was pressed against my trailer. I yelled for him to knock it off. He slowly looked up at me with this creepy little grin, like he thought the whole thing was funny, and without saying a word, he started walking toward me. I backed up toward my cab, keeping my hand on the gun, but not pulling it. I didn't feel like I needed to shoot him, but I wasn't about to let my guard down either. I climbed up into my truck, slammed the door, and locked it. The guy walked right up to my door and looked straight at me through the glass, still wearing that same twisted grin. My heart was pounding, and all I could think was, "Break's over. It's time to get out of here." I started to turn the key when the truck rocked hard, like something slammed against it. I whipped my head to the driver's side mirror. Nothing there. Then I turned to the passenger side, and that's when I saw her. There was a face pressed right against my passenger window. A woman, or at least something that looked like one. Stringy gray hair, sunken eyes, yellow teeth showing through this unnatural smile. She tilted her head slowly to each side, fogging up the glass with her breath, and I swear it didn't feel real. My stomach dropped, and for a second, I froze like I was in a bad dream. Before I could react, things escalated. The guy outside climbed up on my driver's side step and started licking my window, long, slow swipes with his tongue like some deranged animal. Meanwhile, the woman began pounding on the passenger window, smacking it with her palm over and over. Then the man started shouting, saying stuff like, "Come on, open up, we're friendly. What have you got in there? Anything good? "Open the door, boy." At that point, the fear turned into pure adrenaline. I pulled out my gun, and as soon as I raised it where they could see, the woman vanished from the other side like she'd never been there. The man just laughed like a maniac, hopped up and down on my step, and then grinned one last time before tapping his finger against his nose. Then he jumped off and disappeared into the dark. I didn't waste a second. I fired up the engine and peeled out of there as fast as that truck would go. Kept checking my mirrors the whole time, but I never saw headlights behind me. I've had some creepy moments out here, but nothing like that. I don't know what those two were planning, and I don't care to find out. My mom has told me this story so many times that it's basically part of our family lore, even though I barely remember it happening. I was a little kid, probably around 4, and we were on one of those endless road trips my family always seemed to take. Growing up, we drove everywhere, state to state, visiting relatives scattered all over the place. Back then, I was that kid who wanted to hug every stranger in sight and tell them I loved them. That was just who I was. Loud, affectionate, zero sense of danger. Except for this one time. It was just me and my mom on the trip because my dad had to stay home with my brothers. She was going to visit some relatives and also do a little house sitting for them. After driving for hours, we stopped at a rest area so she could use the bathroom and stretch. The place was mostly empty, just a few cars parked around. That's when my mom noticed a man standing near his car, kind of hanging around the lot. She said he didn't look like he was doing anything, just watching people come and go. As soon as we got out of our car, he got out of his. My mom immediately took my hand, but here's the part that stuck with her. Instead of holding the hand closest to the guy, I let go and grabbed her other hand, the side away from him. I was a toddler, but even then, something about this man set off alarms in my little brain. She said I practically dragged her toward the building and stuck as far from him as possible. For a kid who normally ran up to strangers to say hi, that was huge. We went inside, used the restroom, came back out, and he was still there. The weird part? He didn't go inside the whole time. He just stood around, and as soon as we walked to our car, he got back in his. We pulled out, and so did he. At first, my mom tried to ignore it, but when he kept following us after a few turns, she knew it wasn't a coincidence. She tried speeding up a little, then slowing down, then taking a random exit. He stayed right behind us every time. Eventually, she merged back onto the highway, hoping to lose him in traffic, but the road was practically empty. That's when she started getting really scared. Luckily, someone else noticed. A truck driver must have seen how panicked she looked in the rear view, because he pulled up alongside her, kept pace, and gave her a look like he was checking in. She nodded, and somehow that was enough for him to understand what was going on. He got on his radio and called other truckers. Within a few minutes, it was like something out of a movie. Several big rigs started showing up, all working together to box the guy in. They basically formed a moving wall of semi-trucks, slowing him down while my mom exited safely. The original trucker followed her to another rest stop, and when she parked, he got out and came over to make sure we were okay. He even bought us some food at a Burger King down the road, so my mom could calm down before we got back on the highway. He ended up escorting us for a while before heading his own way. I think about that sometimes, the fact that a bunch of strangers went out of their way to protect us. My mom said if it wasn't for that first trucker noticing, things could have gone really bad. Last night was one of the scariest drives I've ever had. It was pretty late, close to midnight, and I was heading home on a highway that was being worked on. They had the lanes narrowed down to just one, with those big concrete barriers boxing everything in on both sides. No way to pull off if something went wrong. There was this huge semi in front of me, and because of the way the road was, I couldn't see past him at all. The speed limit was 70, and that's what we were doing. I remember checking my rear view and noticing there wasn't a single car behind me, which felt a little strange for that time of night, but I didn't think much of it. Out of nowhere, The truck in front of me slams on his brakes. I had to hit mine hard to avoid plowing into the back of him. My first thought was that maybe there was some kind of animal or debris in the road, or maybe another car stopped in front of him that I couldn't see. After a second or two, he started moving again, so I figured whatever it was had cleared. But then he did it again. Stopped dead in the middle of the lane, no warning. I was getting irritated because I still couldn't see a single thing ahead of him, but the road was too tight to go around. The lane eventually widened into two, plus a shoulder, so I slid over a little to get a look. Nothing. Completely clear road ahead. That's when I realized something wasn't right. He starts going again, and for a few minutes it's normal, but then he begins drifting between both lanes. Not like he's distracted, like he's doing it on purpose. Every time I try to make a move to pass him, he speeds up and blocks me. At one point, I actually grabbed my phone and pulled up 911 because I didn't know what else to do. My finger was literally on the call button, but then he accelerated again, so I put it down so I could focus. Now, I drive a Volvo V70R, so I'm used to handling it in weird traffic situations, and I usually keep one hand on the wheel and the other shifting when I need to speed up or slow down. We get up to about 70 again, and I go to grab my phone to finally make the call. But just as I do, he slams on his brakes so hard that my phone goes flying to the floor. Now I can't even reach it without taking my eyes off the road. This whole time, the same pattern keeps happening. He speeds up, I speed up. He slams the brakes, I slam mine. And the thought that kept going through my head was that if another car came up behind me and hit me, I'd go straight under his trailer. No question. The concrete walls made everything worse because there was literally nowhere for me to escape. After a few more rounds of this nonsense, I decided I had to pass him no matter what. I waited for an opening, dropped gears, and went for it. I got about 3/4 past his trailer when he suddenly jerked his truck toward me. Not a slow drift, but a violent swerve. I slammed my brakes and hugged that concrete barrier so tight that my side mirror was probably an inch away from scraping it. If I had been even a little farther ahead, he would have crushed me into the wall. His rear tires missed me by what felt like nothing. Inches. That was the moment I realized this guy wasn't just messing around. He was trying to cause a wreck, maybe even kill me. Once I managed to pull back, I stayed behind him until the road finally opened up to 3 lanes, and that's when I floored it and left him behind. I didn't even look in the mirror. I just wanted as much distance as possible between us. Back in early December of 2005, my brother Alex and his wife had just gotten their youngest kid settled into full-day school, so they were finally able to pick up extra shifts before Christmas. Money was tight, and Alex wasn't the type to sit around when the kids were expecting presents under the tree. The only work he could find was with a delivery company, where he drove a smaller work truck around to businesses that didn't need big rigs. After that monster snowstorm in '99 that kept us stuck at home for weeks, none of us liked the idea of him being out on those roads. But Alex didn't care. He just wanted his kids to have a Christmas. At first, I didn't want to go with him. When he asked me to ride along, I had this gut feeling that something was wrong. But the weather report said the storm wouldn't be bad, and I was the only one with a cell phone. If something happened and he had no way to call for help, I'd never forgive myself. We took a route Alex had driven plenty of times before, but the weather guys were dead wrong. By the time we were nearing the Vermont border, the mountains were just walls of white. It was like driving through a blank sheet of paper. The only way we knew where the road was came from following the tracks left by cars ahead of us, hoping they didn't skid off the road themselves. As daylight started fading, we figured we'd make it to Burlington and stay there for the night. I've never liked cities much, but driving those roads in pitch black wasn't an option. We just need to get through the back roads to Montpelier and then hit the interstate. That was the plan. In the morning, we'd figure out the rest. We filled up at a gas station on the way, grabbed some coffee, and it was so cold outside that even fresh coffee didn't burn going down. Everything around us felt like ice. Still, we figured once we hit the interstate, we'd be fine. So we kept moving, talking about Christmas plans and what gifts we'd get the kids, until we started climbing that mountain. I told him we should turn around, that it didn't feel safe. For a second I thought he'd listen, but then he just shifted gears and said, "Turn back to what?" He had a point. We hadn't seen another soul since we got those coffees. For a while it seemed okay. We ended up behind a plow and another car, which felt like the safest place to be. But then everything changed in seconds. The plow suddenly swerved hard toward the edge of the mountain, like it was dodging something. I was watching it, praying it didn't crash through the guardrail, when Alex shouted something. Before I could even look forward to see what he was yelling about, the car ahead of us slammed into us. The impact threw coffee everywhere, soaked me, the dash, my phone, everything. My chest felt like it had been crushed. My legs were screaming in pain. First thing I did was check my phone, but it was useless. Then I checked Alex. His mouth was bleeding and his eyes were shut. When I said his name and shook him, he groaned. At least he was alive. Out the windshield, all I saw was ice and rock. I had no clue about the other drivers, but I knew I had to find a way to call for help. I told Alex to stay put, but of course he didn't listen. Before I knew it, he was stumbling out of the truck behind me, holding his chest and calling my name. That's when I saw the wreck. The work truck in front of us had crushed the car we were following, flattened it. My stomach sank. There was no way anyone in that car was alive. But Alex limped around to the truck, yanked the passenger door open, and froze. He yelled for me to stay back, which made my heart stop. Were we the only ones left? I thought maybe the plow driver had gone for help. He wasn't there, and there was a dent in the guardrail like something hit it. That's what I told myself anyway. Then Alex climbed into the truck, trying to use the radio, while I stood there useless, hating the idea of being alone even for a second. When I got close, the smell hit me. Beer and blood. That smell is unforgettable. Alex cursed when he realized the radio was dead. And then, just as I started to tell him about the plow, a scream ripped through the cold air. It was sharp and panicked, and it came from the crushed car. I ran to it, ignoring Alex yelling at me to wait. Inside the wreck, I saw her, a young girl, maybe 19 or 20. She had light brown hair with blonde streaks, a Lilo and Stitch shirt, and eyes so blue they didn't even look real. She was crying, screaming for help, and I grabbed her hands through the broken glass, promising her we'd get her out. Alex pulled me back, and she cried harder when my hands slipped from hers. I pushed him off and went right back, holding onto her hands again, telling her she'd be okay. But when I looked down, I understood why Alex was acting so strange. From her waist down, there was nothing, just twisted metal. She didn't seem to realize it at first, but when her eyes followed ours and she saw what we saw, she started begging me to tell her where her legs were. I lied, told her help was coming and she'd be fine. What else could I do? The hours after that are a blur. We gave her every layer of clothing we had, and I wrapped my jacket around her, even when Alex yelled at me to keep it for myself. She told me about her family, about school, and how her boyfriend bailed on the trip last minute. She even laughed a little about that. She didn't talk much toward the end. Her voice got weak. I think she knew she wasn't going to make it. I stayed with her, holding her hands until I could barely feel my fingers. Then, finally, we heard sirens. Alex limped down the road, waving a flashlight like his life depended on it. He couldn't yell anymore. Every cough brought up more blood. But he waved that light like hell until they saw him. I told her rescue was here, but she just gave me this sad, tired smile. It broke me. She knew it was over. They rushed in, tried everything, but Alex had been right all along. She didn't make it. She called her mom one last time from an EMT's phone and told her she loved her. That was it. I'll never forget the sound of her voice saying goodbye. We both ended up in the hospital. Broken ribs, internal injuries. It's 2021 now, and we're alive. But every winter, when the cold cuts through me, I'm right back on that mountain. I never went to her funeral, never met her family. I don't even remember her voice anymore. but I'll never forget that smile. That last bit of strength she had to comfort me when she was the one dying.